Today is the second Sunday in the season of Epiphany in our year of Faith Matters. The second Sunday in a season of learning about the faith, and particularly about learning who Jesus is through gospel lessons and sermons that we hope will show us the face of God. The God who has come to us as miracle worker, as a healer, as teacher, as a person of forgiveness and grace, as a God who welcomes everyone into God's presence. And this Sunday we turn to one of the most famous miracles in Jesus' ministry, Jesus turning water into wine, and the power he reveals to change circumstances so that a wedding banquet is not ruined and the party can go on. It's a story often read at weddings or when people renew their wedding vows. After all, it takes place at a wedding, and it's a good idea to have Jesus at your wedding and in your marriage. And it's always important to remember that God's transforming power comes to us when the wine gives out, when we're in the midst of struggles and don't know the way forward. Scholars have written extensively about the subtleties and symbolism in the story, how it happens on the third day, like the resurrection, how water might be a sign of baptism and wine the communion, how the wedding feast promises another feast one day for all of us in heaven, and most importantly, that we're talking about God in human form when we're looking at Jesus. These are important insights of this rich and memorable story. But what catches me up in this Sunday's gospel, what I couldn't get past this week, is the second line. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Jesus was invited to the wedding and the reception, and he went. Now, I know for a lot of us who know something about parties and social occasions and weddings, this detail may not seem all that important. But in terms of knowing who Jesus is, this is an important piece of information. It tells us that Jesus isn't a stiff, that people liked him, that they wanted Jesus at the party, that maybe Jesus was not always solemn, and sometimes he laughed and danced and had a glass of wine. Jesus is invited to the party, and Jesus goes. Now, wedding's always an important occasion, and no less so in Jesus' day. But I think the reason that I couldn't get past the second line in this gospel is because it reveals something that's crucial to our lives with God, something that's foundational. Jesus is interested in people's lives. People matter to Jesus. People matter to God. So Jesus attends a wedding and enjoys the feast. And when called upon to make sure things go well, Jesus saves the day by turning water into wine, and his followers believe in him because he is a Lord who is interested in their lives. People matter to God, all people. The story we heard today and all the stories we'll hear through the coming weeks reveal this Jesus who has the power of God to heal and teach and forgive, but not only in a general and theoretical way, but personally. The healings, the teachings, the grace all affect individual people's lives and reveal the face of this God who cares, the God who is interested, the God who wants to be involved with us and who is willing, when we invite him in, to change the circumstances and bring us life. People matter to God. And so that this promise doesn't remain just an idea, allow me to remind you for the first time or again that you matter to God. God cares deeply about what happens to you and me today and every day. This Christian life, this life we have with God, is not imaginary, it's real. It's the grace-filled reality the young child touched on as she struggled with learning the Lord's Prayer and prayed, "Our Father who art in heaven, how do you know my name?" God knows your name and mine and is interested in how you're doing today, and how your job or schoolwork or retirement is going, and how your relationships within your family and among your friends are working out, and what concerns you in the dark of the night, and in how you're getting through this pandemic. As I listen to people talk about God, I get the impression so often that they think God is the leader of some big business or the president of some major university and institution who's interested in us as part of the whole, but not personally. One of my longtime friends here spent years telling me that God started everything out, but he gave us brains and hands and feet, And he expected us to take care of our lives and the world around us because God was too busy elsewhere. Well, the promise of God, the promise of the Christian faith we glimpse at the wedding feast, is a God who's intimately involved with your life and mine. The God who creates and sustains all that is, and yet cares for each of us in personal and tangible ways, even attending and rescuing one couple's wedding. And when we invite God to come into our lives, some wonderful and even miraculous things might happen, and we come to know that we do matter to God. Some of you know what I'm talking about because you've had those moments when you've been touched by God, when you felt the presence of God, when you felt God's forgiveness and experienced God's presence. Others of us can expect to know those moments as we invite God into our lives more and more. People matter to God. You and I matter to God personally. And when we invite God to come in, God comes, and the waters of our lives are transformed. As people who matter to God, we are promised a living relationship with God, a relationship that brings life, that brings forgiveness and grace, a relationship that promises transformation, a relationship that is grounded in love. And since people matter to God, since you and I matter to God, then people matter. We've been teaching confirmation class online during this pandemic, and last week's class focused on the two great commandments about loving God and loving your neighbors yourself. We spent a good bit of time talking about our outreach ministries here and abroad, while the confirmands and their parents made casseroles for the St. John's Feeding Ministry. As we were finishing up, we reminded all the families of the importance of participating in outreach and the positive effects we can have in the lives of others and on our own life. And we also reminded them that their outreach, their love of neighbor, involves the people in their lives, at school and at work, in their community, who are looking for someone to love them, to let others know that they matter. I think I may have revealed that as a dork in middle school and high school, dorkier than I am today, it meant so much when someone smiled at me or said hello, or sat with me at lunch, or picked me for a team and not as the last choice. It made me feel like I mattered. For just as we matter to God, so the people next to you matter. Every great movement and renewal of God's church and God's people starts and continues when someone recognizes that because people matter to God, people matter to us. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership in the civil rights movement was based on the belief that people matter to God, all people. St. Teresa of Calcutta's work in the slums in India, and now all around the world, was based on the belief that people matter to God, even the least among us. Our mission and ministry here at St. David's is based on the belief that people matter to God, and so we serve and love them because of it. Look around your life today and over the course of this week. Look at the people in your life. Some of you know well, some you know only by name, some you know nothing about. Like you, they matter to God, and God is calling us to let them know that they matter to us as well. We follow a Lord who promises to transform real people's lives. We believe in a God who is ready and willing to be present with us day by day, to offer us real life because we matter to God. And so this morning, I invite you to know in your heart of hearts that you matter to God. Invite and allow God to enter more deeply into your life today and every day, and then live as though others matters to you as they matter to God. You may not experience miracles like the wedding at Cana, but your life and the life of the world will be changed by our belief and our practice that people matter to God, and because they do, they matter to us. Amen.